The rain fell steadily over Portland, Oregon. It was Wednesday, November 24th, 1971, the afternoon before Thanksgiving. Inside Portland International Airport, travelers hurried toward their gates. Some were heading home for the holidays. Others were making one final business trip before Thanksgiving. For nearly everyone inside the terminal, it was an ordinary afternoon. Among the crowd was a man who attracted almost no attention. Witnesses later described him as being in his mid-40s, around 6 feet tall, approximately 180 pounds, dark hair, dark eyes. He wore a dark business suit, a crisp white dress shirt, a narrow black tie secured with a mother-of-pearl tie clip, and a dark raincoat. Nothing about his appearance stood out. The ticket agent later remembered him as polite, quiet, perfectly ordinary. He walked to the Northwest Orient Airlines ticket counter, purchased a one-way ticket to Seattle, paid the fare in cash, and gave the name Dan Cooper. At the time, passengers boarding domestic flights were not required to pass through the kind of security checkpoints we know today. There were no routine baggage x-rays, no TSA, no metal detectors at every departure gate. For millions of Americans, flying was built on a level of trust that would be almost unimaginable today. Within minutes, Cooper walked across the tarmac and boarded Northwest Orient Flight 305. The aircraft waiting outside was a Boeing 727. To everyone else, it was simply another short flight between Portland and Seattle. To Cooper, it was something else entirely. He took his seat, 18C, near the rear of the cabin, a window seat. Passengers continued boarding around him. A businessman unfolded his newspaper. Another passenger gazed through the rain-speckled window. The low murmur of conversation filled the cabin. No one paid any attention to the quiet man sitting alone, and no one imagined they were sharing the aircraft with the man who would become one of the greatest mysteries in American criminal history. At approximately 2:50 p.m., Flight 305 lifted off from Portland. The climb toward Seattle was smooth. The flight was expected to last less than an hour. Cabin service began as usual. One of the flight attendants working that afternoon was Florence Schaffner, 23 years old, professional, experienced. She had worked countless routine flights. This one seemed no different. As she moved through the cabin, she reached row 18. The man in seat 18C looked up. He smiled politely, then handed her a neatly folded piece of paper. At first, she barely looked at it. Years later, Schaffner explained that flight attendants occasionally received notes from passengers. She assumed it was another phone number, another awkward attempt at conversation without opening it. She slipped the note into her pocket and continued down the aisle. A few seconds passed, then the man leaned slightly toward her. His voice was calm, almost conversational. "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Schaffner stopped. She unfolded the note. The message was brief, direct. It claimed the man sitting in seat 18C was carrying a bomb. He wanted her to sit beside him. Immediately, trying not to alarm the passengers, she returned to his seat. Cooper slowly opened his briefcase, only enough for her to see inside. Schaffner later told investigators she saw what appeared to be red cylindrical objects, wires, and a large battery. Whether it was a genuine explosive or an elaborate bluff, she had no way of knowing. In that moment, she believed the threat was real, and that was all that mattered. Only a few feet away, passengers continued reading newspapers. Others stared quietly through the windows. The engines hummed steadily above the clouds. The cabin remained perfectly calm. No one else realized the flight had just been hijacked. What Cooper asked for next would set in motion one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in American history. Florence Schaffner remained seated beside the man calling himself Dan Cooper. The cabin around them was quiet. Passengers continued their conversations. Some stared out the windows. Others finished their drinks. No one suspected anything was wrong. Cooper spoke calmly. There was no panic in his voice, no anger, no raised tone. He simply explained what he wanted. $200,000 in $20 bills, 4 parachutes, 2 main parachutes, 2 reserve parachutes, and a fuel truck waiting when the aircraft landed in Seattle. Schaffner listened carefully. She knew every word mattered. She memorized the demands, then quietly carried them to the cockpit. When Captain William Scott read the message, the atmosphere inside the flight deck changed instantly. This was no longer a routine flight. The crew quickly contacted Northwest Orient's Operations Center. From there, the information was relayed to federal authorities. Within minutes, the airline, local law enforcement, and the FBI were all working to answer the same question: who was the man calling himself Dan Cooper? While authorities on the ground scrambled to respond, life inside the cabin appeared almost unchanged. Passengers chatted casually. A businessman turned another page of his newspaper. Flight attendants continued moving through the aisle as naturally as possible. The crew understood that panic could be just as dangerous as the bomb itself. Their objective was simple: keep everyone calm, keep Cooper calm, and buy as much time as possible. Cooper remained remarkably composed. Witnesses later described him as polite, soft-spoken, even courteous. He ordered a bourbon and soda, paid for his drink, and quietly smoked cigarettes while waiting. Investigators would later note how unusual his behavior seemed. He wasn't acting impulsively. He appeared prepared. Every request was specific. Every instruction was deliberate. It gave the impression that he had carefully planned what would happen next. One demand immediately caught everyone's attention: 4 parachutes. Not 1, not 2, 4. At the time, no one fully understood why. The request seemed unusual, perhaps even unnecessary. Years later, investigators would come to believe that this single demand may have been one of Cooper's smartest decisions. But for now, the crew had a more immediate problem. They had to make sure those parachutes reached the airplane. As Flight 305 continued circling in the skies above Washington, time became Cooper's greatest ally. Every extra minute allowed authorities to gather the ransom money, locate parachutes, and prepare Seattle for the aircraft's arrival. From the cabin, nothing appeared unusual. From the ground, one of the largest aviation emergencies in American history was unfolding. Police assembled near the airport. FBI agents coordinated with airline officials. Bank employees rushed to gather the cash. Everyone understood they were racing against the clock. Yet Cooper never appeared rushed. He occasionally looked out the window, then back into the cabin, watching, waiting, always calm. It was a level of control that investigators would later find difficult to explain. Was he simply fearless, or had he planned every detail long before stepping onto Flight 305? That question would haunt the investigation for decades, because the next time Flight 305 touched the ground, the hijacking would enter an entirely new phase, and the choices Cooper made in Seattle would become the foundation of one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in FBI history. As Northwest Orient Flight 305 disappeared into the night, no one on board knew they had just witnessed history. The passengers would eventually make it home. The crew would spend years recounting every detail they could remember, and the man calling himself Dan Cooper would never be seen again. In the days that followed, the FBI launched one of the largest investigations in its history. Agents searched mountains, forests, rivers, and thousands of square miles of wilderness. They interviewed hundreds of witnesses, collected every piece of evidence they could find, and pursued countless leads. Yet the closer they looked, the more mysterious the case became. Was Cooper an experienced military parachutist, or simply an extraordinarily lucky criminal? Did he survive the jump, or did the Pacific Northwest claim him that very night? More than half a century later, no definitive answer has ever emerged. What remains are the facts. A man boarded Flight 305 under the name Dan Cooper. He hijacked a commercial airliner, collected a ransom, jumped into the darkness, and vanished. Everything beyond that is mystery. Somewhere, the final answer may still exist, hidden inside an old FBI file, buried beneath the forests of the Pacific Northwest, or lost forever to history. Until that answer is found, one question remains: who was D.B. Cooper?